when you have a legal crisis and a mental crisis at the same time, it's often easy to feel like no one's on your side. That's where Paula Yost comes in. She is the owner and managing partner of the Country Law Shack in Mount Pleasant, North Carolina. Paula helps families navigate estate planning, probate, and guardianship issues. Besides being an attorney, Paula is also a licensed mental health clinician. Gives her a unique perspective when it comes to working with clients in estate planning as well as probate issues. So, Paula, thank you for taking the time to talk with me this morning. I really appreciate it.
Sure, no problem. I'm happy to help.
Great. So you're the first attorney that I've come across or met that really is licensed or has training in mental health issues. What made you decide to become an attorney as well as a licensed mental health counselor?
So I was actually an attorney first.
Okay.
And I got out of law school and began working. And I realized that most of the problems that people had, they really didn't need to be seeing a lawyer for those problems. They needed to be seeing a therapist for those problems.
Yeah.
And I mean, people laugh when I say that, like you just did, but
Yeah.
I am completely serious.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, I had a client who wanted to book a call with me recently, and she was getting divorced. And she wanted to spend about 45 minutes talking about all of the horrible things her husband had done to her.
Right.
And the reality of it was none of those things were legally relevant whatsoever. She needed a lawyer for about 15 minutes.
Right.
She needed a therapist for about 45 to 5 hours worth of time
Right.
to help her pack all of that. Therapy is exponentially cheaper than legal services.
Absolutely.
And for many people, your insurance will pay for it. So many people waste time and money spending an egregious amount of money on an attorney when they don't need an attorney. They need to speak to a therapist about things.
Right.
And so I will straight up tell a client that, like, look, I've helped you with law for about 10 minutes. You do need a lawyer, but you don't need a lawyer for all of this other stuff. You need a therapist for all of that other stuff.
Right.
So I became a therapist as well because I really want to be able to help people. That's why I became a lawyer to begin with, was I wanted to help, but the law is only going to help you but so far. The law has a firm stop on how much it can help you.
Right. That's very interesting. I imagine it sounds like it really gets you to know your clients a lot better and really sort of understand their problems and their pain, I guess their pain points of what they're dealing with when you're talking to them about estate planning and those kind of things.
Absolutely.
How's that changed your practice then? The way you're sort of dealing with your clients?
Well, I don't think it changed my practice, but I think because I am who I am, right? And I practice law the way I practice law.
Right.
I think that it makes me different from other practitioners of law, however, because I do have that mental health training.
Right.
I'm really good at picking up on, like, when does a client need mental health treatment and what type of mental health treatment do they need? I'm really good on helping a client be able to have their feelings validated, but while also explaining the feelings that you're having right now are valid and they're not something that the law is going to help you
Right.
with. So I'm good at getting people in the right pocket. And some attorneys just aren't good at getting a client in the right pocket.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like your clients probably have a really good connection with you. You really connect with them when you're talking to them and working with them.
I try hard.
Yeah. How does that help when it comes to resolving family issues, especially when going through probate? Because I know that I see a lot of families that really sort of split apart when, mom or dad passes away and they have to make tough decisions. How does your education and counseling help?
I think it's a mutual relationship. So I usually tell clients exactly what I just said. The law is going to give you X.
Right.
You can try to argue about Y and Z, but the law is going to give you X. So you can spend a lot of money trying to get Y and Z, but the law is going to give you X. So, you being mad at your brother or feeling like your brother never helped anyone, that doesn't help at all. The law is going to give you X.
Right.
This is a heavy topic, but I actually see a lot of incest cases in estates law. Almost always, when there is a brother and a sister who are fighting about things that are not rational, and I'm sitting there going, well, I'm missing something here.
Right.
In almost every circumstance, there was some sort of sexual assault on brother, on sister, when sister was a minor,
Oh,
and mom
wow.
and dad didn't know what to do. And now mom and dad are dead, and it's 40 years later, and these siblings are now in their 60s with all kinds of unresolved trauma and
Right.
power and control issues that we are now facing as attorneys. And so I see that more often. I was honestly surprised at how often I see that.
Well, you're the first attorney that has said that. I've never really thought about that before. The sexual, misconduct or trauma that could happen in the family. I know it happens, but I didn't realize it was that prevalent. From your
It's more
notes.
prevalent than it's more prevalent than society wants to admit it is. But so frequently, when I have a family that's fighting over stupid stuff, there's something like that going on, or there's some sort of unresolved problem that these people have had since they were kids. Like,
Right.
well, you were always mommy's favorite.
Yeah.
And, and I just talk people through that and try
Right.
to help them differentiate between your feelings and what the law will give you because they are not the same.
Right. So how can estate planning sort of help, again, not expedite the process, but help to sort of eliminate some of those issues that you see with families, fighting about stupid stuff or,
Yeah.
nitpicky thing.
Right. So one of the things that helps a lot is to simply just do a will. So
Yeah.
if you're mom and dad and you're worried that your kids fight and don't get along, or even if your kids are best friends and you're thinking, oh, my kids are going to be great, estate planning is really important because it makes the process easier when you're dead. It makes it easier for your kids to know who's in charge. It makes it easier for your kids to know what their responsibilities are going to be. Um, it also helps you with interesting problems. So when I say interesting problems, I see situations sometimes where maybe dad had a child when he was 17
Right.
and he's never had a relationship with that child because of a laundry list of reasons. So he doesn't really want the child he fathered at 17, who he hasn't seen in 40 years, to be able to come back and make a claim against his estate. He needs to write a will. Like you can write, you don't have to leave anyone anything in terms of your kids. Like as long as they're legally adults, you don't have to leave a child anything.
Hmm.
You can write a child completely out, but you have to write a will that does that. If you don't have a will, then any child that you've had,
Right.
assuming they're a legitimated heir in the state of North Carolina, they can put a claim against your estate. And so you really do have to do planning for that. The other thing that you have to do is you have to focus on the fact that the enemy is not your family. The enemy, and for many people, is the IRS. So I see families who get obsessed with the idea that they need a trust, and they really don't. So you needed a trust definitely back in the 1990s because when Clinton, and this is not a political statement, it's just a statement of fact. When Clinton was in office, you would have to pay federal estate tax if your estate was worth $600,000 or more. And it was very easy to do that for people who lived in Cabarrus and Stanley County because many of our farms were worth $600,000 alone.
Right.
So the state taxes were a very real thing. So you needed those in trusts. But what we've since seen is since the 1990s and that 25-year period, the tax ceiling for estate taxes is now $14 million. So the average person in Cabarrus and Stanley County does not have wealth like that.
Right.
Like, the average person is lucky if they die with 2 or 3 million, much less 14 million.
Right.
So if you have $14 million, you do not need to be seeing me. You need to be, there's only two firms, honestly, that I trust locally with that kind of wealth planning. You need to see me if you have less than $14 million, which is
Okay.
the average person.
Right.
Most of those people do not need a trust. There are other circumstances where you would, like if you needed to do Medicaid planning because you're worried that you are going to need to qualify for long-term care benefits from the government because you don't have enough cash to support that. That's a conversation I have with folks all the time. You can also need a trust if you have a special needs child. Like if you have a child that has Down syndrome or is nonverbal autistic, who's never going to be able to work,
Right.
you may need to look at some form of special needs trust to prevent them from having their Medicaid and disability benefits taken away.
Okay.
But otherwise, the average person does not need that. They just need a simple will. That's literally all they need. Because let's say, for the sake of conversation, you bought your house in 1989 And so your deed is 1989. At that point, if your office has a deed that's 1989 and you've been living in it all this time, if you change your deed, if you do a ladybird deed, if you put that deed into a trust, you have changed the capital gains tax basis to whatever year you redid a deed. But if you just die, then your family inherits your kids inherit your 1989 capital gains tax basis. So in many circumstances, it is more tax advantageous for you to just die.
Really?
Yes, it is.
Uh,
And the other thing that a lot of people also miss is that I have darling little ladies who come in to see me who say, all my kids get along. So I'm going to leave my $2 million to my son, John Sr. And John Sr. he knows what I want. He knows what we're doing. He's going to equitably divide everything after I'm dead among his siblings. To have those types of documents so that if you are alive, but you don't know you're in the world, you have somebody responsible who can help you take care of things.
Yeah. And with the increased amount of dementia and memory issues that are coming around these days, and just for whatever reason, that power of attorney, that ability or that ability for your loved ones to make a decision for that person is more critical now than ever, I would imagine.
Correct.
That's good. So it sounds like a will's a right, a good start, but it's not everything you need. There's more things like you talked about in order to
Correct.
make everything
You need a
aligned.
package. The average person needs an estate package.
Right.
Just to give you some hard numbers, for a single person, my office charges $631 to do a simple will, a healthcare power of attorney, a power of attorney, and a living will and file it.
Sounds
And then
reasonable.
yes, and if you're a married couple, I think it's just double that. I think we charge 1230 or 1262 for spouses and then the filing fees.
So
So
I'm sorry, go ahead. I apologize.
no, it's just much cheaper to do that than it is to wind up having to have your loved one declared incompetent or to wind up having any of the things that could go wrong or having your wishes not really play out the way you want them to.
Right.
You're eliminating a lot of headache for your family by just doing it that way on the front end.
So it sounds like estate planning is not just for wealthy people. It's just for everybody, regardless of your income level, your job, whatever. It's a beneficial thing you need to do as a responsible adult.
Correct. If you own any form of real estate, if you own a car, if you have children who are minors, the only circumstance where I've ever been like, you probably don't need a will is if literally the only thing a person has is a checking account at a bank. No car, no real estate, no nothing, no investments. It's literally the only thing a person has is a personal checking and savings, and they want to put a payable on death beneficiary on that with the bank, then you can probably get away with nothing. But if you own real estate, you need to have a will. First of all, there's absolutely nothing that forces John Sr. to do that. When mom is dead, if John Sr. chooses to keep every dime of it, he legally can. And there's nothing that anyone can do about it.
Wow.
But even if John Sr. loves brothers and sisters and really wants to help them and wants to take care of this for them, if John Sr. attempts to do that, if he tries to take care of this for brother and sister at that point, then the issue becomes he's paying gift taxes. If he's giving his siblings more than whatever that year's gift tax is, then he can get audited and wind up having to pay gift tax on all that money he gave his brothers and sisters.
Right.
So you need to be very careful about the way you do your estate planning. People make it overly complicated and overly expensive by trying to put things in a trust or a trust that's not funded, or being paranoid about Medicaid planning when many people are not going to qualify for Medicaid planning anyway.
Right.
Like for many of us, the Social Security that we're going to draw every month is too high for us to ever qualify for Medicaid.
Right.
So doing things to muck around with your deed is just going to hurt you for tax purposes.
Right.
And then the same thing is true if you try to just give it all to one kid. Don't ever do that. Give each child their fair share so that way when they inherit it, they don't have to pay it. There's no such thing as inheritance taxes in North Carolina.
Really?
So that you don't have to worry about inheritance taxes or federal estate tax. You just get what you get and it's yours and it's done.
So it sounds like it's a lot simpler just to go ahead and pay the fees you have to at the courthouse for probate, because I can't remember exactly the amount of probate, the cost of probate, but I know it varies. But it could, in the long run, it could be cheaper to do that than it is to mess around, like you said, changing the deeds and putting a trust or, that kind of thing.
So often. So the easiest thing to do is go see an experienced attorney who understands how to handle wills, and then have us tell you what you need based on your family and your situation. And every family is going to be different.
Right.
Some families are very, very easy. If I have mom and dad and they've been married all this time and their kids are the same, they don't have children with other people, that's extremely easy. Like there's no reason for that to be unduly
Right.
expensive. It becomes an issue when you wind up having a blended family that has you've got multiple children with different individuals. That can require a little bit more planning. It can also be an issue if you get a late in life marriage. Like I've seen scenarios where two people are widowed, or a widow and a widower get married to one another. And
Right.
then that creates some issues for the respective couple's children.
Right.
And so we have to do some planning to protect the heirs in those
Right.
circumstances.
It's sort of off topic of what you're talking about, but how hard is it to convince mom or dad or a senior or anybody to write out a will, to really express their wishes, to make sure, to avoid these problems down the road?
It really depends, and I see all kinds of things. I think the two biggest issues that I see are one, expense. People get really freaked out, like, oh, I can't afford that. And I'm like, it's so much cheaper to just do some solid estate planning than it is not to,
Right.
because of the problems that you will run into if you don't have a will that takes care of
Right.
everything. And so a lot of it is also myth, like, oh, well, my spouse is going to get everything anyway.
Yeah.
That's not always true. There are certain things that is not the case in North Carolina.
Right.
That merits a conversation about what really does go through your estate and what does not. So that's a conversation that needs to happen about how we're supposed to take care of things like that. The other thing that I see is what I call magical thinking. So these are people who think that if they write a will, they're going to die. Or or children who don't want mom and dad to write a will because, oh, they're going to think I'm trying to kill them or they're going to die. I just like to tell people that writing a will is being a responsible adult. Like, I didn't come from a family of lawyers. Like, I'm a first generation college student. Neither one of my parents went to college at all.
Right.
I learned about estates when I was 23 years old in a wills and trust class that I was required to take by my law school.
Right.
And I was like, oh my gosh, this is a much bigger deal than I think it is. I made a will in 2003 and I'm still alive. Nothing magical happens just
So there,
because,
there's no correlation. You don't write a will, you're not going to die, right?
right, the universe is not going to cause you to pass, but you would be shocked at how many people
No, I
really do
believe it.
have some kind of insane magical belief about that. So I think it's important if you have that parent to try to talk to them about their nonsense. I also think it's important some of the time if the parent attends church, a lot of times pastors can be very helpful in dispelling things like that and helping people have a good handle
Right.
on like what actually, should you be doing. Pastors have been very assistive when we need things.
Right.
Um, Go ahead.
No, it's unique. I never heard of that either. Never really thought about a pastor, being involved in the sort of the estate planning process, or how they can influence someone to actually take the time to go get a will written, or prepare for the time they
Some
they
of
are no longer around.
Some of my best referrals are pastors that are in churches that have an active senior organization because they see the issues happening early on and they're really good because they wind up being who the family then goes to. Like when mama's starting to not remember things, or when siblings aren't getting along, and sweet little Mary Joe, the widow, doesn't know what to do. Like, who do they go to? Well, they go to that crying to their Baptist pastor. And so some
Hmm.
of my best referrals are pastors. On that note, too, I also want to add for just a minute that people get very obsessed about what happens to their things when they die. But I want to talk for just a minute about taking care of you when you're still alive.
Absolutely.
So There's two documents that everyone needs. They are a healthcare power of attorney and a financial power of attorney, because there are worse things than dying. Like, certainly, I have people all the time who wind up in a scenario where they have dementia, they're in it, they need to go into a nursing home. They're paying their power bill 4 times a month or not paying it at all because they just don't remember to handle it. Those folks need to have some form of planning in place. Like, if you're demented and you don't know what your name is or can't sign it anymore, you're not going to be able to do something like sell a house.
Right.
And so those types of folks really do need to have those power of attorneys so that a child or a niece or a friend or someone that they trust can handle that type of stuff for them. Because if you don't have those things, then your only option is to be declared legally incompetent. And if you get declared legally incompetent, then we can't just sell your house without a judicial sale,
Yeah.
which is very expensive and which is a nightmare.
Yeah.
And so you're much better off.
And I imagine it gets even more complicated if you were a small business owner and you ran a business or landscaping, whatever it may be. That just makes it more important to have a path forward if you're not
It
under.
does. It does.
Wow, there's a lot of things to think about, and you don't. I know in college we didn't learn anything about estate planning or the importance of doing it. Sort of left up to the family, like my mom and dad, to teach me about it, which
Right.
I imagine a lot of families don't do that. They just sort of throw it off to the side, forget about it.
Right. It becomes an awkward conversation, I think, for a lot of people to have. And it is one of those life skills that we don't teach people when they're young.
Yeah,
Um, my 11-year-old, however, is pretty good with estate planning at this point. He's been listening to mom talk about this since he was in the womb, so
well, that's
he's pretty
good.
solid on his estate planning at this point.
That's good. So it sounds like he could write an estate plan for me then, right? He could,
Probably.
or
He, I
maybe for
mean,
his classmates. He needs to talk to his classmates about estate
I
planning.
mean, he needs to finish law school, but he
That's why we
can.
don't want him to practice law without a license, right? We don't want to
I
get.
know. I need him to finish law school and take over my empire here.
Well, that's awesome. That's a great plan. It looks like you got it planned out for him. What is one mistake families seem to make over and over when it comes to estate planning?
I think families assuming that this is going to be horrible and complicated when it doesn't have to be horrible and complicated. If you use an attorney who knows what they're doing, some of the time you can just write your name a couple times and never enter a courthouse at all. That's one common mistake that I see, is them trying to do it themselves, messing it up, getting in a mess, not knowing how to fix it.
Right.
The other thing that I see that's a problem a lot is people who want to leave things to minors. So you have to remember that people under 18 do not have a legal right to contract.
Hmm.
And so if you leave a minor a cash gift in your will, or if you leave a minor a share of a house or a piece of land, you are creating a mess. And so usually I tell people, please don't leave your grandchildren something in your will. Let your adult children take care of their own kids, unless your adult children have some kind of drug problem or something.
Right.
But don't clutter up your will with leaving all of your grandchildren and, God forbid, your great grandchildren something. Rather than doing that, like, if I have a wealthy person who really does want to do that, I usually tell them to contact any financial advising firm or a bank and
Hmm.
just set up either a UTMA account or a 529 account or even a basic annuity, and make that minor child the payable on death beneficiary,
Okay.
so that way that child has a little something, but it is considered a non-probatable asset, and it doesn't have to have anything to do with this will.
Okay. Good advice. Thank you. So, do you have anything else you want to share that you feel like is important? Need to talk about, and we've been talking for the last 30 minutes, so I know
No,
you're
I
pretty
think we
valuable.
kind of covered all the big basics.